Good morning and welcome to Saturday Stories. Today we're going to talk a little bit about some mythology, and I wanted to share this wonderful book that we have with you. It's called Myths and Legends of the World, and it's put out by Lonely Planet Kids. And as you can imagine, it has stories and mythologies from all over the globe, all 6 continents that have people. There are 7 continents, but Antarctica doesn't have mythology since no one actually lives there except for some scientists. So the first story that I'm going to read for you is from the Aboriginal people of Australia. And I'm going to very quickly show you the gorgeous map that accompanies the story. And this is called the Rainbow Serpent. In the time before anything existed, the earth was just a sphere of rock, cold and dark, smooth and completely dry. Nothing lived yet. No plants grew, no creatures crept, no water flowed. Beneath the surface, the rainbow serpent lay sleeping. She was breathtakingly beautiful, her scaly back a true rainbow of iridescent colors. The rainbow serpent also had the power to create, but she lay hidden underneath the cold, dark ground. Inside her belly slept every animal that would ever be, all dormant and waiting to be born. One day, the rainbow serpent woke and crawled up to the surface of this unforgiving earth. She stretched her long body this way and that, her stiff muscles uncoiling and lengthening. What could this place be? She wondered. For really, there was not much to be seen on the landscape, if you could even call it a landscape. But the terrain from where she had just emerged now formed a lovely slope, a small mountain. She noticed that in the place where she had stretched her long body to wake it up, there was now a smooth track. The rainbow serpent realized the malleable earth bent to her form, so she began traveling all over the land, winding back and forth, making deep indentations in the ground. As the serpent slithered and stirred, the large hot sun rushed out from her mouth and brightened the sky. Then the iridescent colors of her rainbow body leaped up in an arc to join the sun. How joyful this new earth was becoming! The rainbow serpent began to sing as she traveled, making great gorges, valleys, ridges, and mountains with her body. As she sang, all the animals lying dormant in her belly suddenly woke up. The land and sky animals emerged, slowly and carefully, into the light. Mammals, reptiles, birds, and insects of all kinds walked right out of the rainbow serpent's open mouth and onto the newly formed earth. Welcome, she greeted each one as it emerged. Then a funny new kind of animal hopped out, a frog. Hundreds of them, no, thousands, leapt from the rainbow serpent's mouth. The frogs were giant and heavy, hopping out sluggishly, looking uncomfortably full of something. Once they were out in the world, the rainbow serpent tickled their bellies. The frogs opened their mouths wide to laugh, and out poured floods of water that filled up the deep tracks made by the rainbow serpent all over the land. This is how the oceans, rivers, lakes, and streams all came to be. And so it was that the grass and trees were now able to grow lush and tall. The new animals of the earth were able to drink and thrive. The other amphibians and fish sleeping in the rainbow serpent's belly could come out and join the bustling scene. As it is now on earth, each creature found its place in the world, some on the land, some in the water, and some in the sky. The animals of the earth revered the rainbow serpent for creating the land and bringing them sacred water, which they knew to be a precious thing. Since the rainbow serpent had made the elements, she also made laws for each place, essentially ruling over the earth. Anyone who dared break these laws and disrespect nature would be turned to stone and fused into the landscape rather than be able to enjoy the beautiful earth. So each living creature honored the beautiful rainbow serpent by working hard to care for the land and the water. But of course, there were a small few who lacked respect. Some of the animals began to fight over food, which was strictly against the law. The rainbow serpent immediately turned them to stone. A cheetah became a boulder, and a lion became an island. A small group of ants were turned into pebbles. She turned 2 vicious seagulls into peninsulas. 2 sharks fighting over the same fish suddenly transformed into coral and dropped down to the seafloor. So many creatures broke the rainbow serpent's laws that the landscape became even more varied and interesting. And here is the picture of the rainbow serpent in this book. And if we turn the page, we seem to have the rest of the rainbow serpent. But the animals who did obey the law were happy and healthy. The rainbow serpent saw to that. She turned some of the especially well-behaved ones into humans, each with a talisman signifying the original form, whether mammal, reptile, amphibian, fish, bird, or insect. These new humans were given tools to work the land and families to enjoy their days with. The descendants of these first humans say that when a rainbow appears in the sky, it is the rainbow serpent curving her back across the beautiful land she created. They still consider the land and the water sacred. They honor the rainbow serpent as their ancestors did and recount stories about her. Now that the earth has been formed and populated with animals and early humans, the rainbow serpent commenced a long slumber. For many years she lay dormant. When she finally woke again, she emerged as Goriala and took a male form. Goriala felt lonely. "I need to find my people," he said to no one, for no one was around. Fortunately, Goriala could move fast and efficiently across the land without wasting much time. He moved quickly from the south of Australia to the north, making ravines and mountains with his long, powerful body. Suddenly, faint voices carried by the wind made it to Goriala's keen ears, but the voices were not speaking a language he could understand, and he decided that these could not be from his people. He moved on, creating several more tracks on his journey. Several more times, Goriala thought he heard distant voices, but these too were not in a language he understood. After about a week of travel, Goriala heard joyful singing voices. At last he understood the words they were singing. "Finally, I have found my people," Goriala exclaimed, and followed the sound of the voices until the singing got louder. When he arrived at the camp, he saw that his people were having a raucous party. That's why they were singing. They were also dancing a serpent-like dance, and Goriala danced with them, falling in line as if he had been there with his people all along. His hands fit perfectly into theirs, and his voice melded with the others in perfect harmony. Goriala certainly had found his people, and he was overjoyed. He was also tired from his long journey and this boisterous party. A storm was fast approaching, so Goriala and his people built tents for shelter. They finished just as the rains came down, pouring down, and the thunder crashed. But not everyone had built a shelter. 2 boys of the tribe, the Bilbil brothers, needed a place to stay, and they ran to Goriala's tent. "May we please stay with you?" they implored. "I have no room in my small tent," Goriala told the brothers, "but you may sleep in my mouth where it is warm and safe." He opened his mouth, and the boys hesitated, but they walked inside, desperately needing a place to stay at night. As soon as Goriala closed his mouth, he swallowed the boys. Gulp! Oh no! What had Goriala done? He immediately felt remorseful. It had been an accident. Now he was scared and worried about what his people would think when they found out he had swallowed the boys. For surely when they woke up and took stock of the tribe, they would know the boys were gone and would conduct a thorough search. So Goriala left the camp in the middle of the night. And here's a picture of Goriala. When the adults woke the next morning, of course they were angry. They immediately noticed the missing boys and went searching for Goriala. It was surely his fault. Why else would he have left in the middle of the night? Fortunately for them, Goriala had not gone too far, still tired and full from the night before. The tribe found Goriala asleep in the sun at the top of a small mountain, and they cut him open. The 2 boys emerged from Goriala's open belly as beautiful rainbow lorikeets. They had been transformed into the colorful birds overnight, and they flew far away. If you've been to Riverbank Zoo, you've probably seen the lorikeets that you can feed. So this is their origin story. When Goriala saw his belly had been split open by his own people, he was furious. How can they do this terrible thing to him? He thrashed and crashed in his fury, breaking up whole mountains, throwing rocks down at the people, and turning some of them into animals and trees. Weary and angry, Goriala then vanished into the sea forever, and the people and the animals never saw him again. They were no longer worthy of Goriala's presence on earth, but sometimes, when they were very lucky, they were able to glimpse him as a rainbow in the sky. The end. And now the other story that I'm going to read for you today is from a little bit closer by. This is a coyote story from the Native American people of the United States. And here we have a map of the United States. So, Coyote steals fire for the people. When the world was still brand new, the earth began turning with the seasons. The people were happiest when the spring blossomed and ripened the trees, when summer dropped plump and delicious fruits into their arms, and when autumn cast deep, dark, warm colors into their dreams. But the colors of autumn always faded, and then the pinpricks of frost came over the land, signaling winter. For the people, winter was brutal. Each time the season rolled around, they became fearful and troubled, and some of the children and elders, the weaker ones of the tribe, died during the long freezing nights. The people had heard of fire, this mythical warm-giving thing, but they'd never seen it before, and they did not know where it came from. If only we had fire to stay warm during the winter, they moaned, huddling together and mourning the recent death of one of their infants. Coyote, who with his thick coat had no need for fire, saw the people struggling year after year. Their wails made the fur on his back stand on end. Their sadness chilled Coyote to his bones. In early spring, before the chill had fully loosened its grip, Coyote found his animal friends. He wanted to talk to them about helping the people. It seems the people are not able to cope with our harsh winters, Coyote said to Squirrel, Chipmunk, and Frog. But we animals are able to survive the winter on our own. Chipmunk nodded in agreement. I hibernate. So do I, Frog chimed in. I sleep for months on a bed of mud beneath the frozen surface of the pond. And I spend winters in my den, which is warm enough for me, added Squirrel. And you have nice warm fur, he said to Coyote. You're right, I am lucky, said Coyote. The people are not so lucky. I think I know a way to help them. There is a mountain top where the fire beings lived. I stumbled upon these mystical creatures one evening while stalking the deep, enchanted parts of the forest. Do you know of them? His friends all shook their heads. Well, these creatures are selfish and keep all the fire in the world to themselves, even though the people so desperately need it. They closely guard their fire night and day, afraid that giving away their precious gift might lessen their power. But I've heard there is one moment in the early morning when they let their guard down. In that moment, I will steal the fire for the people. Coyote told his friends that he needed their help, and they agreed to his plan. Coyote, Squirrel, Chipmunk, and Frog set out for the camp of the fire beings. The trail was still icy and just beginning to thaw, but the animals used their claws as they climbed up the mountain where the fire beings lived. When they arrived close to the top of the mountain, it was the dead of the night. From a distance, the animals could see the orange glow of the fire and smell the piquant smoke. However, only Coyote was able to approach the camp of the fire beings, so he could secretly grab the fire and run when the time came. The other animals stayed back, but not too far away, ready to help if necessary. As Coyote crept closer, he made sure to keep quiet, slipping between the trees. He saw 4 beings, each sitting on their own blackened tree stump, forming a circle around a crackling bonfire. Their bodies glowed red like coals, and their eyes glinted like flint. At the ends of their fingers were long, vulture-like claws. Their fire reached as high as the tops of the ancient trees surrounding the clearing and roared as it blazed. So this is fire, Coyote whispered to himself in awe. Who goes there? Screeched one of the fire beings as they all rose to their feet. What do you want with us? Screeched another. It's nothing, said a third being, peering directly at Coyote in his paltry hiding place. Just a mangy coyote who has no need for fire. And the fire beings turned away from him. Coyote heaved a great sigh and lay down on the ground, a few feet closer to the fire beings' camp. They had mistaken him for an ordinary coyote and didn't care that he was there. Well then, Coyote thought, all the easier to inch even nearer to the prize. With fallen pine needles, dried hickory scraps, and other detritus from the forest, the fire beings fed their fire to grow to massive proportions. As the night wore on, each fire being retreated to their shelter to sleep, one by one, until there was only one left to guard. As the deep night lightened unto the dawn, the last fire being yawned deeply. It was nearly his turn to sleep, and Coyote could tell he was getting weary. The fire being slunk over to the shelter and called out, Sister, come out here and watch the fire. I'm tired now and I want to rest. I'm coming, she replied, bleary-eyed and sluggish, but she did not come right away. This was the moment for Coyote to make his move. Seizing his chance, Coyote pounced, snatched a burning stick from the fire. He placed it carefully between his teeth and sprang away down the mountain with the stolen prize. The fire beings saw that they had been tricked. Shrieking, they flew down the mountain after him. As fast as Coyote could run, the fire beings were fastest. One of them reached out and grabbed the tip of Coyote's tail, singeing it white with fierce heat. That is why Coyote's tail tips are still white to this day. Coyote yelped in pain, and his friends immediately came to help. Squirrel, grab the fire, Coyote shouted. He tossed the burning branch to Squirrel, who placed it on her back and ran. But the fire was too hot for Squirrel, and it curled her tail right up and back, which is how squirrels' tails became this shape. The fire beings were too fast for the squirrel too, and they soon caught up with her. Chipmunk, take the fire, Squirrel yelled to her friend, who caught the fire. But the fire beings were catching up to him fast. As Chipmunk turned away, one of the beings scratched down the length of his back with its steely claws, creating 3 lines that you can still see on Chipmunk's back today. Thankfully, Frog hopped alongside and grabbed the fire from the chipmunk's teeny claws. The fire beings grabbed Frog's tail, trying to stop her. Frog wriggled free, still holding onto the fire, but left her tail behind, which is why frogs don't have tails anymore. Over here, yelled Wood, a gnarled tree trunk with knots for eyes and a hollow opening for a mouth. Toss the fire to me. Frog hopped as fast as possible toward Wood just as the fire beings were closing in. She tossed the fire into Wood's mouth, which then closed. Everyone heard a faint sizzle as Wood swallowed the fire, and the chase ceased at once. The animals heaved with relief. The fire beings stopped in their tracks. They gathered together, blinking their flinty eyes and glowing redder at every second, but they did not know how to get the fire out of Wood. First, they tried to bribe it with gifts of smoke and light. But yet, what use were these to Wood? Next, they sang enchanted songs, trying to coax the fire out of Wood. But Wood did not hear their songs. Becoming enraged, the fire beings started to shout and threaten Wood with knives. But the Wood was immune to these threats, and the fire beings had to give up. Angry and defeated, the fire beings trudged back to their mountaintop, knowing that a piece of their precious fire had been relinquished. But Wood whispered to clever Coyote how to get the fire out of him. Coyote then went back to the people and showed them how to rub 2 dry wooden sticks together and spin a sharpened stick in a hole in another piece of wood. This is how you make heat, he told the people, and eventually fire. The people would never again suffer during freezing winters. They were forever grateful to Coyote for the gift of fire. And that's the end of our story time. I hope you'll check out this and other books about mythology that we have at the library. Have a great day.